First of all, I want to give a big thanks to whichever cafe decided to host me over here. I don't know what they got. I don't know what they got themselves into. So I'm just coming back. I'm just coming back from an unbelievable weekend together with Joel and Lisa and 450 others. We got together in this past Shabbos in New York City, in the special city of Crown Heights, Brooklyn. And it was so much fun. It was beautiful. Wasn't that special, Joel? And I actually made today's flight time perfectly, that I shouldn't have to miss tonight's class. I was supposed to take off from LaGuardia at 3:10, arrive in Detroit 4:40, have enough time to come home, hug all my kids, put them to bed, go to class. It would be wonderful. But as God would have it, LaGuardia Airport, there was not a single flight that took off on time today. So it wasn't anything personal against me. The whole airport was just backed up. And even when we got on the plane, we had to wait on the runway for a half hour or so. And I don't know. I was texting Mushki, like, I really don't want to cancel today's class. You know, we took a long break over Passover. We got to get back on schedule. And then I saw that I'm landing at exactly 7 o'clock. And I'm like, you know, Mushki, I'm going to find the place in the airport and I'm going to do it here. So it actually took me a good 20 minutes to find this location. Like, you know, I'm just like trying to think, what's a good location? And here we are. We finally have a good location. So, dear friends, I think that means time to get going. But because, you know, if I'm going to sit down in their bar, I couldn't not purchase something from their menu. So a grand cup of beer is what it's going to be for tonight's class. So I always say l'chaim l'vracha. I always say l'chaim, but it's usually on a cup of coffee. But to say l'chaim, you know, it's not even a real proper l'chaim. You know what I'm saying? This is pretty soft stuff, but still, you know, this is definitely. You come on in, don't worry. So now we got a real l'chaim over here. So l'chaim, and it just shows us no matter where you are, the show's got to continue. No.
Are you still? Are you in Detroit now?
Yeah, this is DTW.
Okay, all right.
We have the wonderful. Let me actually make it less clear.
Yeah, hard to see there.
Oh, you can't see my background. Let me share with you my background. It's a lot of fun. Background that affects. Why is it blurring my background? Oh, there we go. Now I'll be able to see a little bit more of the background. Do you see more of the background? A little bit?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, there you go. You see the truck driving in there? Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit, you see. Thank you so much, sir. Got to pay for this now. Got the bill. Got to pay. Let's pay for the beer. That's important. Okay. Now that we got business taken care of, we paid for the beer, and we got all of you on here. We are right now going to continue. And dear friends, it's funny because if I had to choose anything, thank you so much. Yeah, no worries. As l'chaim. You know, if I had to choose something to teach in the airport, I would choose something very light and easy, because you know this. I don't know if you hear it, but there's like blasting rock music on top of me. But as fate would have it, today we actually have a very, very heavy piece of Tanya, which is going to take a lot of our effort to understand and to concentrate on and to really connect with. So without any further ado, let's get going on today's Tanya. We have the handout. You all have the handout for chapter 39. And actually, I don't even have a printout. I'm looking at it on my computer screen. So you see, thank God, it worked out. It worked out to do it here from the airport. Before we actually get going, final question for you. How's the internet? How's the sound? Be able to hear me well? Able to see me well? Are all the announcements causing confusion? Isn't that amazing? Modern technology, they're able to remove all the background noise. I'm getting all these announcements over here. I've got the headphones, but still the headphones, even with the headphones, that's very, very cool. That's very neat. How are we
Perfect.
doing? You need me to sign? Oh, right, perfect. Oh, truly. It's good gratitude. Okay, I think that's that. All right, dear friends. We paid for the beer. We're all set. Left a tip. They don't kick me out of here, for making a ruckus. I don't know if all the people here signed up for a Tanya class, you know what I'm saying? Okay. We are in the middle of chapter 39. And chapter 39 just may be the most or one of the most difficult chapters of Tanya. It's very, very deep. It's the author is taking us into a very, very deep idea in Kabbalah. And Kabbalah, even though it excites people, Kabbalah class, oh, we want to learn Kabbalah. I don't know what people think Kabbalah is going to be, but it's not an easy subject matter. Real authentic Kabbalah is extremely difficult. It's taking you into a sphere of reality that we don't sense. So anytime, if I'm ever trying to describe to you the observable universe, the universe that we sense with our five senses, that's relatable, that's relatable. It's like what they do on all the National Geographic documentaries. It's called the anthropomorphism, right? I just say, yeah, the animals are just feeling and doing the same stuff we do, so it makes them relatable. The problem is that Kabbalah specifically takes us to the world and to a reality of truth that is totally beyond our five senses, which makes learning Kabbalah very difficult. And it takes a lot of patience. And it's hard to get things right. And even as you get them right, it's difficult to wrap your head around. And perhaps most importantly, it's very hard to understand what is the meaning behind them. So the real truth is raw Kabbalah. If you would open up the book of the Zohar, the book of the Zohar is translated into English. If you would open up the Zohar and actually try to understand it, you're not going to understand anything. I could guarantee you will not understand anything. You need Chassidus. Chassidus does curate teachings of Kabbalah and guides us into understanding them and into finding the meaning within them. And the author is going to do that with us in this chapter 39, but he's doing it in a very advanced level. So it's a heavy chapter. We learned part 1 last week. I want to recap with you what we learned because it's very, very important to recap it. It was very deep ideas. And the more we learn, the more clarity we'll have of what we learned. So this week's class is going to help us understand last week's class. And next week's class is going to help us understand this class and last week's class. So it's a real process. But I think it's going to take us about 3 to 4 classes total to get through chapter 39. So this is class 2. Yeah, easily another class and a half, 2 classes. And here's what we've been discussing. Let's get back into the swing of it because it was deep. And most importantly, and I just want to say this last point before we actually begin reading, is that it is very important while we're reading this chapter to realize Alter Rebbe is not here. It's not his interest to teach us Kabbalah just for the sake of teaching Kabbalah. Thank you so much. If I'm speaking too loud, just let me know, okay? Okay. The Alter is not here to teach us Kabbalah for the sake of teaching us Kabbalah. Now, here's some interesting ideas. We are only learning these ideas because these ideas help us understand the meaning of life right now. But it takes a lot more patience because of the depths of these ideas. We have to learn the ideas. We have to try to understand the ideas as best as we can. And then we'll try to start seeing how the Alter Rebbe is trying to, by showing us what's happening up there, gives us a better understanding of what we're accomplishing in the here and now. But sometimes it's easier to see the meaning and the inspiration and the direction in some teachings. Over here, it's going to be more difficult. So let's begin. Chapter 39. Let's recap a little bit because it's very, very important. We are continuing straight off of where we started last week, so we really need to have a good recap. A mitzvah needs kavanah. Okay, what's kavanah? What's kavanah? What does kavanah do to your mitzvah? And why is that important? So kavanah is really the emotional investment we put into a mitzvah. In other words, what level relationship do we have with God? What level relationship? What's the depth of our relationship that we are bringing into our Yiddishkeit, into our Judaism? So when we learn Torah and we do a mitzvah, well, so you have different options. You could be doing a mitzvah and you could be studying Torah with zero sense of relationship. I'm studying Torah because it's interesting. It's stimulating. God, I don't know about God. I don't care about God. I'm not doing this for God. I'm doing this for me. You can be doing a mitzvah. Why? Because my grandmother did the mitzvah. And I liked it. She liked it. I do it. God, I don't think about God when I'm doing a mitzvah. So that means that there's zero relationship. Or you could be doing a mitzvah with a tremendous sense of feeling for Hashem. That's optimal. That's called kavanah. That there's an emotional presence and investment. Now, when it comes to talking about having a relationship with God, there is a certain spectrum. The spectrum is how much did you bring God into your life, and how much of your life are you willing to let go of? And those two things happen together. It's like a percentage, right? The more percentage you add up, the less percentage of the other side you have, right? How much am I willing to let go of my own sense of self, my own ego, and to bring the truth of God into my life? That's really what a relationship is. Every single relationship is really some experience of you letting go of your own freedoms, of your own comforts, and also of your own emotional sense of independence. That's really what a relationship is. The moment you have a baby, the moment you have a child, right? The moment somebody gets married, they're making a commitment. And that commitment is a commitment of devotion and of this is not about me, this is about somebody or something else. So we can let God into our life. There's one way of letting God into our life. I'm like, God, if there's any place for you here, please feel free to be comfortable. I'm not going to make place for you. If there's place, we'll make place. Like, oh, they see there in the back corner, there's an empty seat. Maybe God, you could sit back there. Or you could say, no, God's important. I'm going to clear out space in my life. I'm even willing to change my life for God. So we have a ratio. How much of your life did you start checking at the door? How much of your life are you willing to compromise, to forfeit, to say, this is not about me. This is not about my comforts. It's not about my interests. And to have the recognition, Hashem is important. And to start bringing God as a reality into your life. That's kavanah. There's different levels of kavanah. You understand what I'm saying? There's different levels of kavanah. The different levels of kavanah correspond to what we call in Kabbalah spiritual worlds. What does it mean, spiritual worlds? Is my video a little bit wiped it off? I don't know if that helps. Okay. A little bit cloudy, maybe. I don't know. Okay. There are four spiritual worlds. But what does that mean there's four spiritual worlds? Very simply, four spiritual worlds are four different levels of the presence of God in realities. So there are four spheres of reality. And the biggest change when you move between one reality and another reality is how much is God a truth in that environment. You smell, take in the air, breathe in the air. What do you sense? Every single one of these worlds really has an infinite layer of levels. But generally speaking, we put them into four categories, four worlds. So we know best our world, which is the lowest sphere of reality. Hey, Babs. Hey, Morgan. How's it going? We know what the lowest experience of reality, what the lowest world looks like. That we know. It looks like this. You see everything. You see the world. You see its environment. You see its inhabitants. You see me. We see you. We don't see God. That's what makes it the lowest world. God is all but gone. And what we do experience is the created reality. So this is the world where created reality dominates, and the presence of God is barely present. But as you go up the worlds, things start shifting. God's presence starts becoming a stronger reality, and the created existence, the environment, the world itself starts feeling less of a presence. So imagine you would look at a tree and say, yes, I see a tree, but I also see God. I also see God's presence. I see God's energy. So as much as I see it as a tree, I also see it as an expression of God. We don't get to sense that. But in higher worlds, that's the perception change. Less me, less sense of somethingness, less sense of independence, less sense of fragmentation, more of that. And really, that mirrors different levels of emotional relationship that we could put into a mitzvah. How much of God are we putting into our mitzvah? So the Alter Rebbe taught us last week that the stronger of a relationship you make with Hashem, in the afterlife, you actually go to that reality. In other words, if you made a relationship with Hashem on the level of, I'm barely here, it's all about Hashem, and you really transformed yourself, it takes a lot of hard work to do that, to really make God a real part of your life. If you do that, you actually go to the spiritual world where that is the reality, which is a beautiful thing. You get to really experience what it really feels like to be in the environment of the relationship that you worked hard on creating here on earth. In other words, you've done a mitzvah. You've actually brought God into your life on this level of commitment, on this level of relationship. In the afterlife, you actually get to experience it. And this is why it's very important to learn about the afterlife. We're not learning about the afterlife because we care to learn about it. We're learning about it because we don't get to understand, we don't sense the effect of our mitzvahs. We do a mitzvah, we barely get a glimmer of why it was a meaningful moment. You know, some people do a mitzvah, they say, oh, you know, it felt good. Some people do a mitzvah, they say, you know, it means nothing to me. But something extraordinary happened when you do a mitzvah. You just brought God into your life. You just made a relationship with Hashem. And that relationship stays forever and ever. You've really just given yourself the gift of God's presence in your life. You don't get to feel it. You get to experience it after our souls leave our bodies. After our souls leave our bodies, they are free to be free souls again. And they're not tethered down anymore to the physical existence that we know of. Oh, so then the soul gets to basically go to the spiritual reality that it created for itself. And there was the Alter Rebbe told us about two different levels, two worlds. Great tzaddikim who have a greater, higher level of a relationship, higher level kavana, they go to the higher world of Beriah. Beriah is world number 2. If you're starting from the top, Beriah is 2. That's tzaddikim. Simpler Jews, ordinary Jews, are capable of kavana, of creating an emotional relationship with God, but it's an emotional relationship which is a little bit lower, and they go to the lower world, world number 3 of Yitzira. So there's 4 worlds. These are 2 worlds you could go to. And the difference is, in one world, there's a much stronger awareness and consciousness of God's presence in that world. Now, one, there's still a very strong presence of God, but it's a little bit weaker. Now, I just want to highlight one more point. This is a long introduction. I want to highlight one more point before we start reading inside. How's the introduction doing so far? We're making sense over here, right? Sounds familiar? Very good. I paid a lot of money for this beer. I got to finish it by the time class is over. I just leave it here. I'm not even driving home. I should have maybe gotten the hard stuff. I don't think they have kosher wine, but I probably could have gotten a nice bourbon or something. You know what I'm saying? I think we drank too much on Shabbos, Joel. No, enough drinking already. Okay. One more point. The way that the Alter Rebbe described the difference of a higher level kavanah and a lower level kavanah is that a higher level kavanah is one where there's an emotional connection that is born through the intellect. Remember that? That the intellect gave birth to these emotions. A lower level kavanah is where there's emotions, but the emotions are more instinctive. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that for a moment. How do we get ourselves to bring God into our life? We do that by thinking about it. At the end of the day, even though we can learn about God and try to understand about God and try to bring God's presence into our lives, at the end of the day, in the words of the Alter Rebbe, we are reminding ourselves. In other words, we're inspiring ourselves with the Torah that we learn. When we learn Tanya, when we learn Chassidus, we're using our minds to try to help us get in touch with our neshama, trying to use the teachings of Torah and the ideas that we're thinking to get in touch with a natural love that we all have for God, the natural relationship we all have with God. So we're using our minds, but our minds are not so much creating a relationship. They are more getting us in the zone of a relationship. They are reminding us of something that we already have inside of us. But there's a much higher way how to use the mind. There's a much greater way how to use the mind. The greater way how to use the mind is to learn Chassidus, to learn about God. And that knowledge becomes so real and so deep within you that you cannot look at the world the same way anymore again. That's a real study, and that's very difficult to do. Ordinary people can't usually do this. This is really for a tzaddik. A tzaddik does this. You know, when we study Tanya, we go to sleep differently from then on. After we learn a chapter of Tanya, does it happen to us that we cannot eat breakfast the same way anymore? Not really. I can learn Tanya and I can understand it. I can get inspired, but breakfast is still breakfast. And a good shower is still a good shower. And money is still as tantalizing as it was yesterday. But really, if you really study it, if you really connected with it, it would alter your reality. And it would be impossible to look at the world the same way anymore. Look at the world the same way again. It's like after you eat food. Once you eat food, you can't get it back out. The second you eat food, your body starts metabolizing it and it starts integrating it. Which is why Mushki may say, Levi, it looks like you're putting a few pounds after Shabbos. What's going on? That's what you eat food. Eating food is very deep. It goes inside of you and becomes you. Imagine if we learned about God that way. Imagine if we were to learn on such a deep level that I can't live my life the same way anymore. I'm a new person. That's a tzaddik. That's the difference between the way we use our minds and the way a tzaddik uses their minds. That's the difference between our kavanah, the kavanah that we have access to, and the kavanah of a tzaddik. Our kavanah is using our minds just to inspire us, to try to get us in touch with the love that we already have. Why do we have it? Because we're a Jew. But a tzaddik has the ability, such a great consciousness, and the ability to connect their minds and to alter their consciousness. That they change themselves. They've transformed themselves. They're not living the same life anymore. That's a higher level kavanah. That's a higher world. Less them or God. By us, we're bringing God in, but at the end of the day, we're still operating within our regular humanity. That's the world of Yetzirah. World of Bria, the higher level kavanah is no. You've let go of your existence. You've let go of what you look like. You've let go of your construct of life, and you've allowed God to reshape your version, your construct of reality. So these are the two levels of kavanah, the two worlds, and it all revolves around how much did you put yourself on the side? How much did you let God in? How are we doing? It's making sense? Now let's do some reading inside. Whew. Any questions? Or we're doing good. I want to make sure that we're allowing this to settle in before we continue. It's okay. You don't. Yeah, go ahead.
If you what level of when you pass, what makes you stay in the level of Yetzirah?
Yetzirah is the lower level kavanah.
Yeah.
Which all Jews are capable of doing. Tzaddikim go to the world of Bria with their higher level kavanah. Regular Jews, as long as they had kavanah, an emotional relationship with God, you go to the world of Yetzirah. Well, let's say you got no kavanah at all. Yeah. We'll learn about that later in the chapter. That's called a dud. That's failure to take off. You ever heard about that? There's a psychological condition called failure to take off. Failure for liftoff. An aircraft is a dud if it can't get off the ground, right? You put up a whole spaceship and it's no liftoff. It's not going anywhere. So if a mitzvah has no kavanah, then basically your relationship with God never moved past your ego. So you're kind of stuck still down here in this world, in this mode of perception. Okay, well, we're going to get to that. Let us get going over here. We are on page 302 in your handout, so page 39. Sorry, page 302? No, page 301. Bottom of page 301. Bottom page 301, correct. Bottom page 301. How are we doing? We're doing good? You see it? Let's start now. We just learned earlier in the chapter that tzaddikim, with their higher level kavanah, which really is called an intellectual relationship with God, intellectual emotions, they go to the world of Bria. Okay, but now the Alter Rebbe is going to qualify that. It's not so simple. Says the Alter Rebbe, however, this association that the tzaddik's soul has with the world of Bria, it only applies to the neshama component exclusively, which is an intellectual component. Because this neshama portion of the soul powers a great consciousness of God. Yeah. Let me explain to you what's happening. You see, the soul has 5 different levels, 5 dimensions to the soul. The element of the soul that powers a deep understanding of God is the 3rd layer of the soul called neshama. So the word neshama has 2 meanings. It could either refer to the soul as a whole, which is how it's usually used, but it could also refer specifically to the neshama element, the neshama dimension of the soul. The neshama dimension is what allows the tzaddik to really connect with God. Now, sometimes a tzaddik, even if a tzaddik has the ability to connect to God on a very deep level of neshama, not always does he have that ability. You just think about us, our senses. Sometimes we'll wake up one day and we'll be like, my mind's not working well today, right? Or today, for some reason, my words are slurring. I'm just not at the top of my game. Today, my hands are clumsy. So we all know that some days are better, some days are worse. So I guess something similar to that. Not always is a tzaddik able to be in neshama mode, where they're able to be creating that level of kavanah, which is on the high tzaddik level of kavanah, which comes from their neshama. So what the Alter Rebbe says is not only the Judaism that the tzaddik did with the level of neshama, only that part of their life is able to kind of exist in the space of the world of Bria, but not necessarily did the whole life of the tzaddik, not necessarily that every single day, every single moment operate on that profound level of kavanah. So continues the Alter Rebbe, top page 302. But then you have the lower ruach portion of the tzaddikim. This is the lower level of the soul that powers the emotions of the soul. Uh-huh. So that part of this of the tzaddik is not going to be in the world of Bria. And so too, all the other Jewish souls, all of us, who worship God through natural emotions, from a reverence and love which is naturally dormant within the heart of all Jews. That's our capability of kavanah. We're just trying to arouse our natural love we have for God, and that's how we operate. Oh, so all of us Jews, when we do kavanah, and the tzaddik, when he's not able to really power up that high level kavanah mode of tzaddik, says the Alter Rebbe, these souls do not ascend there to the intellectual world of Bria, but rather to the world of Yetzirah. Okay, very interesting. So a tzaddik doesn't inhabit a higher world, but a tzaddik is also a part of the tzaddik is in the world of Yetzirah as well. So all of us, our maximum, the world that we go to, if we do mitzvahs with kavanah, is the world of Yetzirah. A tzaddik has the capability to go to the world of Bria, but not necessarily the whole life of the tzaddik. Okay, but here's where the Alter is going to. This is fascinating. But the Alter says, even though we go to the world of Yetzirah, but there's a big exception, except for on Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh. Shabbat and the first day of the month, which is, we celebrated that last week. So once a month and once a week, then there's an exception. What happens then? When all of reality experiences an elevation. This is what Judaism teaches. On Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, the world changes. There's an elevation that exists throughout all of reality. All of the cosmos, all of existence experiences an elevation. And because of that, the souls are also able to go up. Then, on Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, even ordinary souls can ascend through the channel, which passes from the lower Garden of Eden to the higher Garden of Eden. And what's the higher Garden of Eden? It is the world of Berea. There you have it. There is a channel that connects these two spiritual worlds. See, even though these souls are in the world of Yetzirah, they're able to ascend. There's a channel, and they're able to access that channel and go up once a week and once a month to the world of Bria. Okay, what happens when you go up to the world of Bria? Why is that important? Why is that meaningful? Says the Alter Rebbe, the world of Bria is very special because there, these souls take pleasure in God and enjoy the radiance of the divine presence. In the world of Yetzirah, you can't truly experience God. And you can't truly experience the pleasure of God. But in the world of Bria, in that world, you really get to bask in the glow, in the beauty of being in God's presence. Why could you only experience it really in the world of Bria? Says the Alter Rebbe. This pleasure is only truly there in the world of Bria. Why? For there's no real enjoyment or pleasure for created intellect other than grasping, understanding, and recognizing with their intellect and logic whatever could be understood or grasped of the blessed infinite one, which is accessible through God's chokhmah and bina, which shine there in the world of Bria. That's the world. The world of Bria is where God is accessible on an intellectual level. And what is the pleasure of this soul? The soul is able to understand. The soul is not sensual. A spiritual soul doesn't need a massage. That's not its pleasure. Right? A spiritual soul doesn't need a steak. That's not its pleasure. Its pleasure is to be in touch with the truth. What's the truth of reality? And the truth of reality is God. And it can access the truth of reality by understanding. But that ability to understand God is only accessible in the world of Bria, because only in the world of Bria is the ability, is God's presence on the level of intellectually understanding it. It's only accessible there. But here the Alter Rebbe asks a very important question, and this is really that's really where we see. That's really where we see. That's really where what we're going to learn right now is really where we're going to see, I think, where the Alter is trying to get to. Something very interesting here. Think about it. Earlier in the chapter, we introduced that the angels also inhabit the world of Yetzirah, this lower level world. Why? Because angels are like animals and they serve God emotionally, no intellect. They instinctively are in tune with God and they serve God in that mode. So 1 second. We Jews also are not really capable of intellectually bonding with God and creating an emotional relationship that's purely based on the intellect, So why is it only that only the souls get to go up to the world of Bria? Why not the angels? It's a technical question, but it's actually a very important question. Says the Alter Rebbe. Let's read bottom page 302. Why are these ordinary souls privileged to rise to the world of Bria above the angels, which remain in Yetzirah? Seemingly, these souls are no better than the angels, as their worship is based only on an innate fear and love, and not something generated using their minds. Think about it. The angels serve God with their emotions. What are we doing? We're serving God with our emotions. What's better about regular Jew who's serving God and trying to arouse his natural emotions versus an angel? Why only do the human souls, the Jewish souls? Why are they the only ones able to go up, to ascend up to the world of Bria? Says the Alter Rebbe, and here's a beautiful idea. The reason is because they, meaning us, the souls, have an advantage over the angels. Why? Because through their fear and love, they subdue the Sitra Achra within their bodies. Unlike the angels, who naturally serve God and don't need to overcome any inner negativity. This is a very profound idea. Yes, angels serve God, but angels don't have any tension. It's like an animal. Animals never have a confusing life. Whatever they feel, they do. And that's the life they're meant to live. Angels are like that. They're never having to fight over an evil inclination. They never have a body that says, no, let's not do a mitzvah. Let's just sit on the couch and watch a TV show. When a Jew's doing this, there's tension. They have to overcome the unholiness of the body, the Sitra Achra of the body, and the Sitra Achra of the body is not interested in Judaism. And we have to overcome that. We have to break free of it. How do we break? And that happens in two ways. Continues the Alter Rebbe. The Sitra Achra is subdued both when they turn away from evil, overcoming and breaking free from their desires, as well as when they do good, as mentioned above. It's both, all types of mitzvahs. Anytime you do a mitzvah, either you do a mitzvah that you don't do something that you want to do, or you do something that you don't want to do. Right? So I would rather do this, but Hashem told me not to do it. So you do that mitzvah. Or I don't care to do this, but Hashem wants me to do it. You have to face the tension. You're breaking the Sitra Achra. And that's very profound. Why is it very profound? Says the Alter Rebbe, and this was a conscious mental choice these souls made. It didn't come naturally to us. It was a mental choice. For these souls possessed free choice, right? These souls in the afterlife, when they lived their life and did these mitzvahs, they possessed free choice to choose evil, God forbid. They could have chosen evil, and instead they chose good, to subdue the Sitra Achra. And that's a great thing, to exalt the glory of the Blessed Holy One, etc., like the advantage of light that comes from darkness is mentioned above. Says the Alter Rebbe like this. Angels serve God. And by the way, frankly, angels serve God better than we serve God. How much of an emotional presence does God have in our life? A little bit, not much. But angels 24/7, 24/7, they're feeling God in their life. So who serves God better? Me or an angel? Not a question. Angels look far better than us. Here's the interesting thing. But angels are not putting up a fight. Angels don't even have a choice. In other words, an angel is serving God 24/7, but they're not putting away themselves to bring God into their life. But when a Jew does a little mitzvah, even with a little bit of kavanah, maybe it doesn't look as passionate. The relationship doesn't seem as passionate as the angels. You know what it has? It has something very real and deep. You've put your life away and you've allowed God to take over. Anytime that we do a mitzvah and we say, I'd rather not wake up right now and go to daven. I'd rather not get home early to light Shabbos candles. I'm not in the mood of a Torah class tonight. And we say, no, this is important. I'm going to do it. And we get a little bit of kavanah. We get a little bit of motivation. I'm doing this for Hashem. You're not so passionate, maybe. The angel's a lot more passionate than you. But you know what you have? You've just transcended your own ego and you've brought God into it. And because of that, you just earned your ticket to the world of Bria. That's a taste of what tzaddikim have, to transcend their lives, to change their lives, and bring God into their lives. That's special. And that is why, really, even though a Jew's Judaism and a Jew's connection with Hashem, well, probably will never look as good as an angel's. It's more precious. It really is a greater godly experience. So this whole teaching of Kabbalah in the world is helping us understand this beautiful point. The point of kavanah is not about how passionate it looks. It's about how real it is. And there's only one question. Did you bring God into your life? Did you clear out a little bit of your own ego and say, Hashem, I'm allowing you into my life, to my own inconvenience? That's what it's really all about. All right, dear friends. How was that? How are we doing? Let's read the next little section. In bottom page 303, part 2 of the chapter, the author is going to tell us something that I already told you last week, and I even spoke about it a little bit this week. But the author is now going to tell us. And let me first introduce it to you. You see, and this is the next idea, next layer we're going to learn about in this process of where your soul goes, and your soul goes to experience the mitzvahs that it did. Here's the next layer. And this is very, very profound. This is really one of the key messages of this chapter, what we're about to learn in the next 12 minutes. You know, when you do a mitzvah, you are doing something amazing. A mitzvah is not just you fulfilling a commandment from God. It is that, and that's beautiful. But it's so much more than that. A mitzvah is you bringing God into your life in a very real way. You know, I know somebody who, a fellow Chabad rabbi, he knew a young man. And this young man was very thirsty for love. And this young man made a relationship with a young woman on some app, you know, just found it and started chatting. And the chatting and opening up more and more and more. And all of a sudden he feels that this is such a deep relationship and she's so responsive and she's sharing about her life. And but she's not Jewish. So this young man comes over to the rabbi and says, I'm dating this woman. This is getting very, very, very real, very intense. Can you help convert her? So the rabbi says, no, let's start the conversation, you know, because really that's not ideal, you know. You don't convert to get married. You convert to convert, you know. Converting to get married is usually not such a good idea. Usually it's not, that doesn't last very well, you know. That means there's no real commitment. Okay. You know what this rabbi discovered? That he wasn't texting a real person. It was an AI chat box. Somehow he got duped, but it's a phenomenon these days of there's a phenomenon these days of people are so thirsty for love that you know today they have these AI chatbots chat and they're very convincingly real. So it wasn't even a real person. That's just how crazy it was, you know. So we're not talking about that kind of relationship. You know, a real relationship. You really, you know, what's a real relationship? When you're up close to somebody. A mitzvah is not just that I am doing something for God, you know, from long distance. He's up there, I'm down here, I get to do something. A mitzvah brings God 1,000% into your life. In other words, a mitzvah is not a creation of God. A mitzvah is the experience of God. The problem is that we don't get to experience them. We don't get to experience them. We do a mitzvah, we don't feel any closer to God, we don't feel God's embrace, and life continues, right? Now, by the way, if we would really feel what a mitzvah is, we wouldn't survive the experience. Really, a mitzvah is such a special and intense moment, it'd be impossible to survive. So we don't get to experience the mitzvah when we do it. We experience the mitzvah in the afterlife. But in the afterlife, we're not doing the mitzvah. We're observing the mitzvah. In other words, in the afterlife, you get to, just like a fire, you go camping and you make a nice bonfire. So you want to get close to the fire, but not too close, right? You want to enjoy the warmth and the glow, but from a distance, a healthy distance. Souls get to experience the mitzvahs that they did, but from a healthy distance. So what happens is the author is going to tell us, and it's going to be much more heavy technical words. The mitzvah goes up to heaven, but the mitzvah is literally God's presence. You go to the world of that mitzvah. If you did a mitzvah and the relationship of that mitzvah was a deep relationship, your mitzvah is in the world of Bria. If it was a mitzvah with kavanah, it was a lower level kavanah, the mitzvah itself becomes the godly presence in the world of Yitzirah. And then in the afterlife, you go and visit your world of your mitzvahs. And you literally experience your mitzvahs. All the experience, all the joy, all the warmth of the mitzvah that we didn't get to experience today, we're going to experience that there. But there we can experience that from a healthy distance. Here is where we're in the experience. And that would zap us. We wouldn't be able to experience it. It would be too overwhelming. In heaven, we're not doing the mitzvah. We're observing it. We're able to feel what it really was, but from a little bit of a distance. Let's read that now inside. And this is Kabbalah heavy, but we have to stay focused on the main point. And I think I just told you the main point. Bottom page 303. Let's learn. Part 2. Experiencing your Judaism in your spiritual world. You experience your Judaism in your spiritual world. Let's learn. Says the Alter Rebbe. Now, the above discussion, meaning everything we learned about in the chapter until now, was about the spiritual address of the souls, as well as their temporary stations. Where are the souls? Which world do they go to? But we didn't talk yet about the actual mitzvahs you do and the Torah that you studied. Says the Alter Rebbe, but your Torah and worship are different. They don't go to a world. Rather, they go up and are literally absorbed in the 10 Sefirot of the appropriate world. They don't go into the world. They become the godliness of that world. The 10 Sefirot is the very godliness, the godly energy of that world. So your mitzvah becomes the godly presence of that world. What's the 10 Sefirot? Says the Alter Rebbe, which are a manifestation of godliness. Since the blessed infinite light is merged with the Sefirot as perfectly as could be. That's what the Sefirot are. The 10 Sefirot in every world is the divine presence, and that carries God. It's 10 channels, but it's God's presence. So here's the interesting thing. There's 2 components to every world. There's the world, the environment, the inhabitants, the habitat, and then there's the godly presence within that world. In the afterlife, we go to a world. We become part of its inhabitants. We become part of its habitat, like there's souls, there's angels, whatever. In our world, there's trees, clouds, airplanes behind me, right? A cup of beer, fine. A mitzvah doesn't go to a world. It becomes the very godly presence within that world. That's the difference. Let's continue learning. Specifically, the world which your worship reaches depends on the type of kavanah, which means where does your mitzvah go? Depends on the kavanah. When it's motivated by intellectually generated fear and love, then the worship your mitzvahs rises to the 10 Sefirot of Bria. Whereas when it is motivated by a natural fear and love, that's lower level kavanah, then it rises, then those mitzvahs rise to the 10 sefirot of Yetzirah. Okay, continuing. And within the 10 sefirot of all the worlds are invested the 10 sefirot of Atzilut. The most intense manifestation of God in the 10 sefirot is in the highest world, which is called Atzilut. And all the worlds really have within them the 10 sefirot of Atzilut. And the 10 sefirot of Atzilut are perfectly united with their emanating source, which is God, the Blessed Infinite One. Meaning, the 10 sefirot are not a creation. They are literally God's presence within the world. And that's what a mitzvah is. A mitzvah is not a creation. A mitzvah is you brought God into reality. So your mitzvahs become the godly presence within a different world. But that's not so with the souls. The souls, they're not God, they're a creation. Says the Alter, but they are not absorbed into the godliness of the 10 divine sefirot, but rather the souls remain in the chambers and the repositories of the worlds of Bria or Yetzirah. A soul, yeah, it's godly, but it's a creation. So the soul doesn't become godliness. It doesn't merge back into godliness. A soul is a soul. The mitzvah literally is godliness. It becomes the godliness of that world. So the souls go back to the worlds, and they're still an existence, an independent piece of existence. And there in those spiritual worlds, these souls bask in the radiance of the divine presence. The blessed infinite light that is merged with the 10 sefirot of Bria or Yetzirah. There in those spiritual worlds, the souls go there and they experience God on a whole different level. We don't really get to experience God in this world, but when our soul goes up to these worlds, either Bria or Yetzirah, it experiences God on a whole different level. And what is it experiencing? Here's the clincher, says the Alter Rebbe. And this radiance, the radiance that these souls are enjoying and basking in, is in fact nothing other than the radiance of that person's actual Torah and worship. All your Torah and mitzvahs, the divine light of the mitzvah. See Zohar V'Yakal 2:10b. You experience the mitzvah. That is the experience of God. In other words, you're experiencing the very relationship you made with Hashem in this world. And it concludes the Alter Rebbe this section, for this is how it is. The reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, the very mitzvah itself. The Ethics of Our Father tells us this line: the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. And the simple meaning of that, conventional meaning of that is simply, when you do a mitzvah, God rewards you, then you'll have the chance to do another mitzvah. You gave charity, Hashem will reward you with another opportunity to help somebody. But Chassidus sees it much deeper. No, it's a much more profound message over here. The reward for a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. You know what the reward is? When you go to heaven, God's not saying, wow, you did mitzvahs, let me give you $1 million. You did a lot of mitzvahs, let me give you a good piece of cheesecake. No. God is saying, you did a mitzvah, here's your mitzvah. In lifetime, you didn't really get to experience and understand what you were doing. You go to heaven, wow, this was my mitzvah. And that's the afterlife. You study Torah. God says, here's your Torah you just studied. Wow, that was the Torah. This is a true joy. The mitzvah itself becomes the joy of the afterlife. The Alter is telling us about the afterlife, not because we care about the afterlife, but by learning about the afterlife, it helps us understand what's the power of the mitzvahs we're doing now and how Kavanah plays such an integral role in the mitzvahs we do today. So even though we don't get to experience the mitzvahs today, we can understand what's the power of what we're doing right now by studying Torah. And right now when we do a mitzvah. And with that, dear friends, it's 8:30. Look at that, so punctual. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Look at this. The weather tried and the flight schedules tried getting us to stop, but here we are, learning Tanya, no matter what, no matter where, no matter how. I think I chased this place is almost empty. I think I chased everybody out. I I just took over the whole bar over here. I don't know what's going on. Okay. What can we say? Have a wonderful evening, everybody. If you have any questions or any thoughts, please feel free to stay on. I've got nowhere to go.
I got nowhere to go. Poor guy. Poor guy.
When are you going to go home?
Right now, I'll pack up and I walk out and get a taxi home,
Oh, yeah, you're in Detroit, right? Okay.
I'm in Detroit now.
Yeah.